Welcome back to the Tara Palmeri Show. On this show, we are going to further dissect that awkward interview with Lindy Li. It's the one that I just posted before this one. And we're just going to go into how a person like Lindy Li goes from being an ardent Democrat, the type of person who scolds people for questioning Joe Biden's age, to becoming a darling on the MAGA right in a matter of 6 months, getting her own show on Patrick Bett's network.
I'm Lindy Li. I'm a political strategist who recently left the Democratic cult.
It is amazing. She has influenced millions and millions of views, and she's done it with lines like, I'm gonna burn the Democratic establishment down. I have receipts. I have a book coming out. I know where the bodies are buried. But she has very little new information. And in fact, when I just pushed some buttons and asked a few simple questions, her entire narrative fell apart.
I did not write that line.
He just made that up.
No, he didn't make that up. Are you just here to ambush me?
Now, this is obviously bigger than Li. It's about this moment in time. What does Lindy Li really represent in this moment of political entertainment and this moment when political influencers like Lindy Li have enough cachet that politicians have to go through them to go into office? Just look at how Donald Trump spoke to Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn, and that was the way he connected with an audience of young men that helped him get into the White House. They offered cachet and influence, and Lindy Li was on her way to being that exact type of person. There is a blueprint that any Frankenstein can now use to create a political monster like her. I talk about the bigger picture with my friend Steve Schmidt of The Warning. You may remember Steve as John McCain's campaign manager. He also helped Congressman Dean Phillips come out during the primaries in 2024 and challenge former President Joe Biden. So as you can imagine, Steve has serious backbone. And on this show, we talk about how necessary that will be for Democrats who are looking to run for president in 2028, that they are going to have character and fortitude. And many of them who are particularly close to Biden, those that worked in his administration, those that fought for him on TV, they're going to have to answer a lot of uncomfortable questions about when they knew he was not doing well, what they knew, and why they didn't speak out about it. Steve and I discuss all of this and more, who's absolutely disqualified from the race, how some of them can redeem themselves, what do they have to do? After all, Steve has spent a lifetime helping people in crisis, so he has some very interesting thoughts on that. Take a listen here.
This is Steve Schmidt with The Warning. Today we're doing a collaboration I'm really excited about with Tara Palmeri at The Red Letter. And if you are not subscribed to The Red Letter, please subscribe to The Red Letter, because it's the type of independent journalism that everybody on the Warning platform says we need more of. That's necessary, and it is. And I just want to say a couple things about Tara before we get going, who has started not so long ago, has built the Red Letter into a formidable new media enterprise that I enjoy following, but it's breaking real news. And one of the things that you should know about Tara is that in this moment, one of the things to be cognizant of is the answer to the question of who's on your side. And Tara is on your side. And the evidence of that, and you can go and you can read this on the Red Letter, about she's walking home and sees a man in a store, a Target, I believe, being assaulted, and Tara runs into the fight to try to help the man and records it and reports on it. And that's Tara's nature, to run into the fight, to run into the trouble, to tell you what's going on, and to stand up for decency and the right in a moment where there's a lot of right and wrong to cover. So I admire Tara very much on that front. But also, right, there's an insight that Tara brings to all of this, and the Red Letter does. And I view it as the Cafe Milano test, right? And that's a power restaurant in Washington, D.C., right, where you can probably buy a nice bowl of $110 spaghetti and all that good stuff. And it's where a lot of the power players hang out. And so some people go in there, right, and they say, well, there's the Democrats, there's the Republicans. And what Tara has is the insight and the judgment to recognize that at a fundamental level, these are all the same people, right? And those people don't necessarily have anything uh, uh, in common with you, but they have a lot in common with each other. And reporting on them through a dispassionate lens is a really, really important thing. Uh, Tara, unique amongst all of the journalists operating in the United States right now, did not approach Laura Loomer like she was a circus exhibit, and instead met Laura Loomer where Laura Loomer actually exists. And Laura Loomer is one of the most powerful people in this country who can walk into the Oval Office at whim, sit down with the President of the United States, lay out a file of information, and take out half of the National Security Council or defenestrate the Surgeon General of the United States. So it's important for you to understand the power, where it flows from, all of these things. And we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about politics, what's going on in the country. Again, this is a collaboration between the Warning and the Red Letter. We're here with Tara Palmeri. And the first thing we're going to talk about is this riveting interview you do with Lindy Li. And I said when I sent it out earlier today that it was like a Law and Order episode for politics, where
Yeah.
you unmask somebody from the grifter class who, if I was to set it up, this person is Blue MAGA, who in 22 is Republicans are for killing you and Democrats are the saviors of the world, and somebody who's on cable news on election night. I think she's on MSNBC. She's at the election night party. She's a surrogate for the Biden campaign. And suddenly she's now, I'm going to bring down the conspiracy by exposing it that the senior White House people committed on the American people by covering up on Biden's health. I'm going to bring down this big lie. And she's now a top MAGA influencer. And she has her own show on a conspiracy podcast filled with other crazy people. And she is as full MAGA as she was full Biden on the day of the election, full Kamala Harris, all of it within 6 months' time. And you do this interview with her and you start asking her questions, and it goes from there. And you unmask her. Obviously, she's completely fraudulent, and all of her claims and all of the things she says she's not that she did is not true. And this woman's name is Lindy Li. Talk to us about the interview and set it up so people kind of have some context as they go to watch it. And again, over at the Red Letter, and I urge everyone to go and watch it because it's a incredible psychological portraiture of a personality type that is catastrophically poisoning America's politics and America's government and America's ability to function as a society.
Yeah, thank you, Steve, for that very generous introduction. It means a lot to me coming from you. I know
Thank
I've
you.
known you for a while now, and you've always followed the North Star, and your gut has always been to do the right thing, and that's why I admire you and ask you for advice on things like this. Even before I published this, interview, I was like, "Oh God, Steve, this is brutal." The way that this woman collapses under even the most basic questions. That just like asking questions about copies of, pitches for her book, where she claims that she was in the Lincoln bedroom taking phone calls. And I'm like, now, what parts of the White House were you in? how did you get in there? And then she admits that it was a ghostwriter who wrote it, and then starts shouting at me about how it's her truth and I don't have to believe her. And it's just I'm very like non-confrontational, but if you point out little holes, it was just completely collapsing her entire narrative. And, some people might say, why are you giving Lindy Li a platform? I don't know if you have ever Googled her. She's got a huge platform. If you go online, she's getting millions and millions of views, 4 million views on the Sean Ryan show alone. Dave Rubin's show, she's got millions of views. Now she has her own show. She is the darling of the right. And this, political media complex, or whatever you want to call it, political entertainment complex that exists right now, she's a trusted source. I mean, she's a Biden advisor and a Kamala Harris advisor, Biden personal friend, as she describes herself. And so I didn't actually go into the interview thinking like I'm going to take this woman's narrative apart. I actually just went into it thinking, well, who is she? Because I'd never heard of her before. She claims she has firsthand knowledge and access to what I think is clear as day to anyone that there was a cover up of Biden's condition and attempt to run him, even though he wasn't able to. So she had some shreds of truth in it, but anyone could say that. Now, what kind of information do you have that's unique that isn't already in the public domain right now? And she didn't have anything unique to say. She said that her book was being turned into a movie, which I found to be very hard to believe. It hadn't been published yet. So it's just, as I started talking to her, I just kept noticing little holes in her story, and I poked at it. And just the slightest poke caused an eruption and an enragement that I would dare question her narrative, because when she walks on the set of these, like what I would call political entertainment shows at this point, she is not questioned. She is like, I'm going to burn down the establishment. I know where the bodies are buried. These vague platitudes, and calling the Democratic Party a cult. And there are no facts to back it up. But she says, I have receipts. There are no receipts. In fact, Jamie Harrison, who is the head of the Democratic National Committee, and by the way, I am no way trying to give the party a pass for this. I think that what happened with Biden is completely separate than than Lindy Li's narrative now. He put forward a tweet last night showing Lindy Li on October 24th, just days before her conversion after Election Day, 2024, asking to get on the photo line at an event with the vice president. So she had a lot of pictures with the president and the vice president because she raised money for the party. And when you do that, you're allowed into the White House and you get to take pictures. But she turned those pictures and, claims of a cover up, which happened, into a story that was all about her. And she kept repeating this. This is all about me. This is my story. I said, because I asked, why is your story so unique from the many other stories that are out there about Biden and this period of time? And she said, it's about me. It's about me, 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 me. I have firsthand knowledge. I talked to the president's sister, Valerie Biden. I talked to Ashley. I have this. And they're all on secondhand information. Okay, what is that information? Nothing. And I just think that this is a particular type of person that thrives off of, it's sort of media attention. She clearly wanted to either be perhaps maybe one day like a spokesperson in a Harris Biden administration. And since that didn't work out, she switched over to the other side. And which is why I asked her, why should we believe you now when you claim that at the time you believed that everyone around you was nefarious and you were privately warning but publicly scolding people? And that was another reason that she was very angry with me. And I think her reaction to my questions were sort of telling. A lot of silence, and then when it wasn't silence, there was anger. So it's just, I think, a narrative of our time and how she's actually a blueprint for other people who can be created. I mean, we both know this. Every party loves a convert, right? But it's just this particular moment in time in which the way to have influence is just so easy. You don't have the barriers to entry anymore.
No, that's what I was just thinking, right? There's none, right? There's no qualification whatsoever, but the ease with which she was able to get on television, and all of these places, right, would say that we have standards, we have practices, we have an ethical bar, but that's refuted by her ease of being able to be in front of an audience,
right,
to spout whatever nonsense that serves her interest in the moment. And so there's this remarkable moment in this interview where you say to her, well, does principle matter at all? You're in November, right, for a progressive Democrat, and all of a sudden now, right, you're on this far right oppositional, and she's trying to justify it. And psychologically, right, it's so interesting because you're not rude, right? You're asking very tight questions, and she hears, right, in the voice in her head, right, is telling her, right, that she's in trouble, right, that she's drowning. And so she's taking the situation at hand as a deep threat to her, right? But reacting to it as, oh, you're the threat, right, as opposed to the truth. And there's this immediately like jarring instant in this where she goes, well, what do you want me to do? Like, politics is my life. It's my life. And what do you want me to be, like a teacher?
Oh, the
Right? And it's
horror.
like,
The horror of being a teacher.
and
Like,
and it's like that. This is a sick person,
right.
right? Self-important, right? Delusional and narcissistic, who believes she has an entitlement to BS everybody so long as she gets to be in the room where it happens. And it's just the complete opposite of the John Kennedy summons to service, right? It's that if you look at it from that moment, the launch of the new frontier, January 20, 1961, yes, not what you can do for your right country, not ask what not ask what your country can do for you, what you can do for your country, to this. What a travesty. And
Yeah. I mean, it was
it's just a
so
perfect.
clear that it wasn't about her. I mean, it was so clear that it really was all about hers, which she said from the top. It was just really all about her the entire time. And to me, I just like, how could you just do something you don't believe in? How nobody forces you to work. And she brags about how she's a wealthy woman living in a penthouse. She doesn't even have to work. And she wasn't working on
Brilliant,
the campaign.
brilliant, brilliant expose of the grifter class that exists in American politics, that is parasitic and so deeply damaging. We're talking about Lindy Li. We're talking about the multi-millions person influencer, the unmasking of her in Tara's brilliant interview, which you can find over at the Red Letter. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here at the noon hour as the audience is starting to climb a little bit, and we'll kind of get into the conversation. And I wanted to start, you did this interview with Rahm Emanuel, and you asked an important question, which I think is going to be a foundational one for a bunch of people that have aspirations to run for president. We're going to talk a little bit about that early lane today in the 2028 race. I know you wanted to get into that, but so you asked Rahm Emanuel, who's the ambassador to Japan, you say, how much interaction did you have with the president? Um, and right, what awareness did you have of his state? And do you have any insight to offer as these books are coming out, as Biden is now back front and center about what's happening? And he basically said, well, I had hardly any interaction with him at all, saw him a couple times, and I didn't think he should run again. And he said something in the interview which is like pretty profound. He said, you know, Democrats as a first order of business are going to have to apologize for the thing that they did wrong. And if it's the position of a couple handful, right? I'm not trying to indict an institution, right? 100 people and say, hey, we didn't do anything wrong, right? And F you to the American people who think they did. And that the demand is politically, the American people have to meet us where we are in Washington, right? The DNC, that we're right, they're wrong, right? We got another disaster from my political perspective, right? That's cooking in the pot that I don't want to see come to boil ever again, because I'd like to see what I regard as a malignancy of political pestilence removed from power. So I think this is an existential question. And one of the things that you have said, you've written about, right, is that you don't think, right, as somebody who I believe really gets journalism in this moment and really gets politics in this moment, you don't think the party can move on until it deals with this issue and deals with it forthrightly, which doesn't mean, by the way, that you have to beat the shit out of yourself for it for 6 months. It means you have to address it forthrightly in 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think if you're going to go on a book tour, if you're going to try to run for president, I mean, like, I have to assume that Rahm Emanuel, I mean, he was on my show because he's doing publicity. I was not the only person. He was on The Daily Show. He has a Substack now. He was on various podcasts, and he has ambitions for 2028. He sees himself as someone who could be president. Anyone who can see themselves as someone who could be president of the United States has to take hard questions, hands down. And anyone who sees himself as someone who could be president in 2028 and was a part of the Democratic leadership, a part of Democratic establishment in a senior position in Biden's administration. Okay, Rahm Emanuel was the ambassador to Japan. He constantly said during the interview how it was a strategic place in the world to show his importance in his position. But, I asked him about this and what kind of access he had to Biden in this role. And I just think that anybody moving forward, and that includes Gavin Newsom, Pete Buttigieg, anyone who worked for Biden, anyone who was at the DNC at top layers, they have to say clearly why they stood by Biden after the debate, like someone like Gavin Newsom, for example, who really made a point of standing by Biden throughout the entire thing. Even in the beginning, I think back in I remember it was November 2022, he said that no one should challenge Biden. And I know it's awkward. Listen, you can say it. I worked for the guy. What was I supposed to say? Rahm said, I barely saw him, which jives with a lot of the reporting that even Janet Yellen never saw him. But we have to be honest to move forward. This is the elephant in the room, if you want to say that. I mean, you can't move forward without it. I just think we are in a period of anti-establishment right now, anti-party. And Democrats have a 27% approval rating. Republicans, the MAGA party, whatever you want to call it, will soon be out of favor too, because people are demanding the truth. They're demanding authenticity. They hate politicians. If you want to win this election 2028, you have to be the anti-politician, which is why I personally think that someone who comes from a different world, like podcasting, or even the way that Trump transcended to reality TV, someone that you thought you knew all about because you were with him day, noon, and night while you watched his show, is going to be someone who can captivate America. They're going to be the type of person that you feel like the type of person you feel like you trusted. A lot of the reasons that people liked and trusted Trump was because they felt like he said the most outrageous thing, so he must be honest, right? And that's why Democrats are trying out this language where they curse a little bit more, they talk about sports, or they sound like normal people. If you struggle to sound like a normal person, do not run for president in 2028. And so I think we are at this period of time, thank COVID, social media, the fact that you and I mean, and I don't know if you want me to tell people where you are, where I am, we are far away from each other, a flight away from each other, and we can sit here in our living rooms and talk to each other candidly. No producer put us on a set together. No one, this is just human beings having honest, real conversations. We don't live in a world anymore where you can show up with talking points and not answer real questions. And I think the idea even of a book tour, of a publicity tour is kind of dated as well. And that's probably why Rahm, who says he's working on a book but doesn't have one yet, is already doing it and has the Substack and has the following. I mean, I'm sure you get this too, but the number of people who are Democrats that want to come on my show, I get a lot of them requesting, to come on. And I'm flattered that they want to, but I do think it's because they realize that we were people that they kind of ignored in the last election, and they saw Trump winning through people like us, and seeing members, Congress, senators, etc., sitting down and having honest conversations. I think the audience rewarded them for that.
Who am I missing when you look ahead? Because I don't think we're going to see very much, right, of the old guard, though the old guard media has their favorites and is pushing them forward. But I think almost all of them are not plausible candidates.
Yeah, I mean, these are the people that you've named, although sorry, I'm saying his name. Auchincloss, which probably means that he's so, out there right now that, you've identified some talent that is rising that I've heard of him. I think I've texted with him a few times, but like, I didn't put him in that level yet. Clooney, I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, I just think America hates Hollywood right now. Clooney was a part of the Democratic establishment. I don't know if he gets accolades for calling out Joe Biden in the way that he probably thinks he should. Maybe he's very charming. I mean, maybe he could pull it off, but I don't get the vibe that like America is like, we want an actor right now. Actors are a little different than reality stars and podcasters. You don't really know what their ethos is, who they are, their constitution, their core. They're not sharing themselves all the time. There's just actually a little bit of mystery around them, and that's on purpose, right? And so I'm not entirely sure about George. But I listen. Anything is possible. I certainly think he's interested. I interviewed Maureen Dowd, and she said after talking to him for 3 hours, she finally asked him, "So are you going to run for president?" And he was very much like, maybe. No, he didn't say maybe. He said no, but she said she wasn't convinced. And I would say she's a very good judge of these sorts of conversations and characters and people in general. So she sensed that he has bigger ambition. And I noticed he's doing a lot of political shows when he promotes his new his play, Good Night and Good Luck. He's interesting. Andy Bashir is obviously someone whose name is thrown around a lot. I think there's like a preference for the governors. Then there's Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania. It's going to be a really, really big stage. There's going to be multiple stages.
Westmore,
how can I forget?
Right?
Westmore
from Maryland.
Exactly. It's going to be a huge stage. Lots of governors. I do think that binder over Gretchen Whitmer's face, it's just going to haunt her. It will haunt her. There's no way to get over it. And you're right. It was bad instincts. Stand tall if you're in there. Say, I fought for Michigan. That's why I showed up. Don't be ashamed. Like it just shows bad instincts, like you said, in that fight or flight moment, how do you react? And I think that it's still very early days, but the way that everyone is trying to do it, if you saw, Andy Bashir has a podcast, Gavin Newsom has a podcast. They're doing it this way. They want people to have this is their book tour that just keeps going for the next 4 years. And so there'll be new people.
We got Pritzker on the list. We got to put Shapiro on the list.
Cory Booker, don't forget him. He
we got.
He didn't go to the bathroom for 24 hours.
Right, Cory. I think Cory Booker we can put on the list. I got Ro Khanna on the list. And again, right, these are what I think could be impactful candidacies. I put Abigail Spanberger on the list, who would be in her third year potentially. And I think she's very talented. I think that there are 3 superstars in the Democratic Party that are going to get elected here. We got Mikey Sherrill in the Democratic Party in New Jersey. I'm for Mikey Sherrill. I'm a New Jersey guy.
She's from my district.
I'm for Mikey Sherrill. I am for Abigail Spanberger in Virginia and for Jocelyn Benson in Michigan. I think these are all people with a lot of character, and they're going to be coming in. I was really happy to see my friend Tim Ryan talk about he's taking a look at governor of Ohio. I think that you got a Democratic governor of Ohio. I think the Democratic governor is the front runner for president. And then I want to talk about Mayor Pete, but I think Mayor Pete, um, right, somebody was saying, Mayor Pete speaks 8 languages, and I said, well, he's got to give an answer in 30 seconds in one language about Joe Biden, and then
That's
we'll
true.
take it and we'll take it from there.
What would you
Um,
tell him to say? Because you have worked on the other side. I mean, if you were giving Mayor Pete advice, I would love to hear it.
well, I think it's the Palmeri question, right? I just like you're going to ask everybody, and I think they're all going to come on your show. And I think you asked the question that Rahm Emanuel answered, which is how much access, how much time did you spend with Biden? And I think the reality, is for Buttigieg is that he didn't spend very much time with Biden, and he's going to have to say that. He's going to have to acknowledge that, and then he's going to have to stand by however it is he handled the questions about whether Biden was capable of running or not against the facts in an election cycle where credibility and consistency on matters of character, right, are going to be important issues, right? And I
But
don't.
there's one
It's
more thing. There's one more
right,
follow up. Why didn't you say anything? Like,
right,
why? Because, and he's gonna say, I didn't know." But he's Pete Buttigieg. Like, I ran for like that's the thing. It's like Rahm Emanuel. They're power brokers. They talk. They know. Like, why didn't you say anything?
right.
Why did you guys not come out and support Dean Phillips? I mean, he
Yeah,
was someone that you helped support. Why did you make it so that anyone who thought that they challenged Biden, there would be hell to pay? Because that was the ecosystem in Washington at the time. If you dared to primary him, you're done. The the donors will kill you, will kill you, will all come out with statements from the Clintons to the Obamas to this, you're dead. There was a culture of fear, and there are not a lot of, as we know, there are very rare badges of courage in politics, and there were a few. You were with one of them, Dean Phillips. I know you weren't his campaign manager, but you helped him come out on stage and make his debut. But that was a brave thing for him to do.
yeah, sure was.
He just so happens to be a billionaire, which helps. But if you weren't, I don't know how you would handle that. And he's had that YOLO way about him. For Kamala Harris, so many people are just like, I just don't trust her. It wasn't because she's like deceiving, horrible person. She just never felt comfortable in her own skin. She was overtrained, overcoached. How many consultants in Washington, D.C. need to just get fired? Like, what are they doing? Just be a person. If they like you, they like you. If they don't, then this isn't the right profession for you. Go do something else.
Yeah,
I mean, if that's one thing from the Lindy Li episode, when I heard her say, this is my life, I'm like, God, I feel bad for someone like that. Because, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. That's life. Move on. The reason that you are elected is because people believe that you can represent them. You're not elected because you believe you should be representing them. You're elected because they believe you should be representing them. And so if everyone could just get past that, we wouldn't need focus groups and polling and all that other BS. Like, people could just say, yeah, I'll be a leader on this. I think the best leaders are the ones who don't want it. Sometimes it's like even like the funniest comedians are the people that would never go up on stage.
right.
And it's kind of the same thing. And I think like if you really want to kick ass in this next election, Democratic Party, unsolicited advice from someone who is not a political scientist, find someone who's real. Find someone outside of the bubble. And if you have
I
someone in the bubble, like you got to break away. You have to almost say like, I'm the anti-Democrat.
So I think, right. So the first thing I want to be part of discarding the idea that we should have an admissions process to the presidential race
Right.
that is DC controlled and media controlled and hierarchical, like you have to be a senator or you have to be a governor. If I had to make a broad, stereotypical decision, right, and I had to disqualify a group, right, as a group from being able to be considered for president, I would wipe away the senators and governors, right? If I could only name two groups, like none of you would be allowed to run, right? But of course, right, you don't want to disqualify anybody. But let's get into right what I think is important, which is expanding right the pool of consideration by dropping it down to include some members of Congress, right? And typically the member of Congress, right, is not viewed by the national media, which I think has lost all authority to really kind of referee the pre-primary process. But I think that there are a couple of House members that I think are really interesting presidential candidates on the Democratic side.
And the
And
funny thing
this
is, though,
doesn't,
Steve, like governors will always be like, well, you need executive skills. And
yeah,
like they'll
bullshit.
always play that up.
Yeah, no, they will. But I think I think the character side of this um, will kind of supersede. So I like AOC in the race. I like Auchincloss in the race, and they're about the same age. 38 for me is about that. That's as young as I can go, right? She'll be on the line, right? Auchincloss is a little bit older. I hope Ro Khanna will be in the race, and I think Jason Crow. I think all four of them as House members, very serious candidates for president. And the governor side of it, I think Mikey Sherrill is a top tier presidential candidate.
Mm.
Um, and she'll have been governor for 3 years, and I think she'll be a successful governor, presuming she makes it through. I think Pritzker, the Nation magazine said he's the best governor in the country by accomplishment and record. He's had a very tough job in Illinois. Pritzker understands the moment, and he has given a series of interviews and speeches that I think have met it. And on the merits, I put him there right from a leadership capacity that's there. I think in the governors you got Shapiro and Moore, and I think
Yeah.
I think that's the top tier. I think that Mayor Pete is not fresh or new anymore, and his platform coming in, that he's smart, I have no doubt of, that he's fluent in 8 languages, I find impressive. I like it that he's a Rhodes Scholar. I like it that he's an officer, but I also think that he falls in a category of people politically that just genetically were inclined to start preparing their presidential campaigns between age 4 and 6. And he's in that category.
If you ran
Newsom
for
is in that
student council
category,
president, no.
right? If you're a student council recidivist, no. So like I think um, all of those people, and then I think on the Senate side, a John Ossoff after reelection, I could see making a run. I could see a Tim Ryan as governor, people demanding he get in and drafted, whether he wanted it or not, because a Republican can't win without Ohio. Um, and so like that to me is kind of the top tier right list right now that you know, and then there's going to be a lane of unknowns, right? Whether it's a Clooney or some person in the
Yeah.
culture who's able to capture captured over. Deborah, we have Deborah North here saying we keep skipping over Shapiro. We haven't. Shapiro's on the list. I just said he's a top tier
So
governor.
Mark Cuban, what do you think? He's interested.
He is interesting. He is interesting. I said when somebody says Shapiro said no, nobody has said no unless they've issued the Sherman-esque statement. It's never a no. They all want to be president. I think that
I don't ever. No means yes in politics, by the way.
right.
And the only place no means yes is in politics.
I think you have to be able to. I think you have to fundamentally be able to articulate what it is that you want to do as president and how you lead after this. So, for example, right, it requires in the moment to conceptualize the picture of the inauguration around Trump with all of the oligarchs. And that is the appropriate word for it, right? It's exactly what it is, seated in front of his cabinet. It was a symbol meant to intimidate, meant to express power by the force of submission. And they all submitted. And so you have that photograph. And so when the Democrats run, one of the things, right, that has to be talked about is that the breakup of the concentrations of power and wealth that are so destabilizing to the free market system, and an appreciation that FDR saved capitalism, didn't threaten it, right, through reform. And so what we will experience as a country, right, in the next, let's call it 3 months, is going to be very, very, very hard for working class people, for a lot of Trump voters. And there's a lot of people who have been abused by lies, been abused by power, been abused by self-interest, that have been deceived by all manner of different categories of grifters. And it's a real test, right, I think, ahead for people basically to communicate like who is on your side. And that's the test, right? That's the question. And it'll be interesting as we kind of get into the routine of doing this once a week, where we talk about the politics of it and watch the developments ahead. But you have your finger on the pulse of that. I think better than most everybody, right? That's covering this stuff.
I think the thing is, character is so important right now, and like you've always said that, but I feel like it just, that's going to be everything. When you're in the approval rating at 27%, the only way to rebuild yourself is through honesty. I don't know how else they can do it, really. And some radical changes. I don't mean like radical shift to the left or radical shift to the center right. I mean radical changes about the way that the party exists, transparency, autopsy reports, coming forward, people speaking openly, and then moving forward. It's just like, there's no other way forward. I don't know. I mean, you've worked with people before that are in places like this where they have to atone for what they've done. And isn't the best advice always sorry, and this is how I'm going to move forward?
That's why I really urge you to follow the Red Letter.
Yeah, my new show too.
Independent journalism.
The Tara Palmeri Show.
The Tara Palmeri Show. Right.
Okay.
Just the best at doing this. And so thank you, Tara. We're going to do this every week.
Yeah, we should. It's great.
And it's going to be great. And again, this is the Warning and the Red Letter together. And thank all of you for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. And thank you all for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.
To support my journalism, please hit that subscribe button and share this with your friends. To get my reports first and straight to your inbox, consider becoming a subscriber to my newsletter, The Red Letter, at tarapalmeri.com. You can also become a VIP member of this channel, or even go a step further if you have the means by donating to my GoFundMe page. You can find it in the description to the show. See you again soon.